Welcome to UNCAGED. Today we're speaking with Tracy Lawrence. Tracy is the founder and CEO of the Lawrence Advisory. She focuses on areas such as executive recruiting, leadership coaching, organizational development. She is a leadership consultant specializing in delivering dramatic improvements in organizations with strong and distinct cultures. Anyone that has been working in any business over the last decade has seen really the expansion and explosion and reinvention of the whole executive coaching field. And so excited to talk to you about that today, Tracy. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about you and your career.
Thanks, Van. It's great. Like I said, it's great to be here. So I've had my firm, the Lawrence Advisory, for about 14 years. And prior to that, I was an executive, primarily in the entertainment industry. I came up through marketing. After graduate school, went into brand management and then worked in the television industry. So I worked at MTV networks at a time when cable television was really exploding, and developed kind of an area of expertise for launching new television networks. And that involves a lot of branding and also just a lot of kind of entrepreneurial, or, I was working for corporations, so I would say entrepreneurial skills, and really understanding how businesses work. So that was my primary career for quite a while. And then I became general manager of a television network called the Fox Family Channel, and ran that television network until it was sold to Disney. At that point, I was really looking for something new. And one of the things that I had always been very interested in is the issue of leadership and management. I'd had a fairly large team that I was managing and had always been interested in this question of how the people and what motivates people within businesses affects your business results.
Yeah.
So I ended up making a transition, became an executive recruiter for a large global search firm, and then spun off and started my own.
It's amazing. I'm excited to hear more about really what you're building specifically at the Lawrence Advisory. I mean, it's an interesting time in the entertainment industry in general. So I think a lot of people need executive coaching in the entertainment world right now. But tell me more about the Lawrence Advisory.
Yeah, so our firm, what I love about our firm is that because we operate in these three distinct areas, it allows us to stay with our clients for a long time. So we're not just coming in to do one project and leaving. We really focus on long-term strategic partnerships and the idea of being real trusted advisors for our clients. So we do executive recruiting, and that's everything from, we're looking for a president of a new division or a company. And one of my favorite things to do is we've gone in with some organizations and put in an entire team. So we will put in the entire senior team, all of the department heads at once, for organizations that are in the middle of rapid or dramatic change. And I love that because, you're having a huge impact on how the organization looks and the culture of the organization. So we do that with our recruiting. I work as an executive coach, primarily C-suite, executive and above, but we have other coaches on our team that work with, more mid-level, other senior level people. So there's a coaching practice. And then there's also organizational consulting, and that can be, how are you scaling a business? So for example, we have a client right now that's a television studio that is just closing a deal for a significant financial investment from a private equity firm. So they're going to double, triple in size in the next few years. So what does that look like? What does that mean for, how should the organization be structured? Are the right people in place? That kind of thing. So we do a deep dive with them on things like that. There's looking at culture, organizational culture? Is the culture aligned with what your business goals are, that kind of thing?
One of the things that really pops when I was reading the description about your organization is you talk about these ideas of strong and distinct
Yeah.
cultures. Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, so as I mentioned, I came up through the entertainment industry, which I really enjoyed because I always liked being in a place where things are changing a lot, because that's when it gets really interesting. So I started my practice in the entertainment industry, right? So because that was where a lot of my relationships are, and we still do work a lot with entertainment, which is constantly evolving, as you mentioned. But from there, this notion of what are other businesses that are experiencing dramatic change? And so I think because of my background, developed this affinity and area of expertise for working with strong and distinct cultures. So I've worked with everything from a division of NASA that, was
Wow.
working on some really cool, I mean, some of this stuff is, some of it is somewhat confidential, but,
Yeah.
a division of NASA that was working on some really interesting projects. And how do you motivate all of these high-level engineers to do what,
Yeah.
got 100 PhDs in whatever physics and whatever else the areas are? How do you motivate them to show up and work together? And these are really unusual personality profiles. I just did an offsite with the senior leadership team for the USA Triathlon Organization,
Cool.
which is a client. So, these are people who are all long distance, they've had long careers, and they're long distance runners, or they're triathletes, or, a couple of them had just done Ironman, and they're department heads at this organization.
Wow.
So, how are we structuring that organization to be aligned with their goals? And these are really interesting and different people. They're not the type of people that you would see at a typical Fortune 500 corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And I mean, it's an interesting space that you operate in. I mean, I think back over the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years, and we've been on this crazy roller coaster where I would say your industry in particular has been really front and center in terms of coaching and recruiting people and recruiting and then managing recruiting of different structures and operational structures. Now that we're out of the pandemic and we're into, let's say, this new economic cycle, what are you seeing that's on the mind of your customers right now? What are the top priorities?
I think that there's definitely some nervousness about the economy, for sure. But the economy is holding up pretty well.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really interesting right now is that even with, questions about the economy, it's still difficult to recruit the right people to your business. It's a very, very tough recruiting business market right now. Candidates drop out of searches. I think as a result of pandemic, people are just less likely to give up everything in their lives for a job.
Yeah.
So, you have to really, for clients in recruiting, it's really important that they understand that, people are looking for more than they used to in
Yeah.
organizations. The other thing
Yeah.
that's really interesting about working in the leadership space is that more than ever before, you have more generations working together than we've
Wow.
ever seen. So it's something like 5 different generations within a typical workplace. And so it's not uncommon that we tend to work with more senior level leadership. And a lot of the conversations that I've had with them is the new demands of running an organization are very, very different than the leadership training that they got. So if you're like a 50-year-old or more CEO and you learned leadership in business school years ago, and it was more command and control, and now you've got some Gen Z people
Yeah.
who may not even believe that you should be making decisions as CEO.
Yeah, it's a fascinating moment that we find ourselves in. And it is, as I get older, I'm a Generation Xer. As I get older and I think back on how I came up in the industry, and I look at how others now are thinking about their own careers and managing their own lives, it is fascinating to see the differences, and it is actually quite my more thoughtful friends I find are almost amazed and impressed by younger generations, because they're kind of like, wow, they're so much more thoughtful than we were. They're so much more like, they're thinking about themselves so much more than we did, whereas I think, the Xers were kind of like very self-sacrificial, right? We just do like whatever it took to make things happen. But it does create kind of odd moments in offices where, some of my leadership team will sit down with younger folks and they'll say like, so, there's a huge opportunity and we got to get this turned around in the next 24 hours. And the response is, yeah, I don't know if that's going to work for me. And you're just like,
Yeah.
whoa, that's amazing. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to go hiking that day, so I'm not
yeah,
really sure that I can make that
yeah,
work. And yeah.
yeah. But if you pull yourself away and you think about it, it is that more holistic thing is probably healthier ultimately. So I'm excited for the future. And let me change gears a little bit, Tracy, because I find that when people gravitate to certain fields, there's something that's kind of a real driver for the passion. So tell me a little bit about, what is it about this area that you really, really love?
I think it's such a great question. And what I always say is that my whole career, starting even back in high school, was really about my interest in two different things. One, I love business, I love organizations, and I just, I've always been somewhat of an entrepreneurial person. But the other one is this question of what motivates people to do the things that they do. And
Right,
so, when I was in high school, I would have said I wanted to be a journalist. I was
right.
really interested in journalism. And because it gets into like, why are you doing that? And let me find out more. And then when I learned about marketing, that's the same thing, right? You're learning how to motivate people to take certain actions. And so I had a long career in marketing. This is kind of a natural evolution of those questions, right?
Yeah.
So how do you can have a business plan that says, oh, we're going to increase our market share, we're going to accomplish the following goals. But if you don't know how to motivate people to take the right actions, it really doesn't matter what your business plan is.
Yeah, you're
It's
absolutely right.
so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Tracy, as you look at this space evolving, I'm not a big believer in the long-term future, but like the near future, especially in your area with the entertainment space. Here we are in the midst of a strike, with the writers and actors, and the studios are going through massive upheaval in terms of the commercial model in their industry. What's on the horizon? What should leaders be thinking about?
I think that from a business model standpoint, I sort of take the long view, which is that there's a business model now, it is evolving, but 10 years from now, it may look entirely different
Yeah.
also, right? So you do have to just stay on top of technology and where things are going. I kind of feel like this whole sprint towards streaming on the entertainment industry, it reminds me of past changes in the industry as well, where everyone thinks that the one solution is this, but then when you look back, there's going to be something else in the next 10 years that everyone thinks is the one solution, right?
Yeah.
So you just kind of have to stay on top of trends and technology, right?
Absolutely.
I do think that this issue of the challenges for leadership in light of the changes in our society, the changes in what the employee base is going to look like, I think that is a huge challenge for people. And it's
Yeah.
something that I don't think enough people are focusing on.
It's an interesting one because I was reading an article that outlined the discussion around companies that are asking their employees to go back to work, go
Yeah.
back to the office, and how those companies are actually really hitting many barriers in that shift back. One is that a large percentage of employers are actually just saying, no, I don't
Yeah.
want to go back. And I definitely don't want to go back full time. And then the second thing is when companies mention that that is something that's expected when they're trying to recruit, people are just like, not
Yeah.
interested. And that
That
goes
is,
back to your point of that the expectations of what should be part of kind of an executive package are different, right? It's quite a nuanced area.
100%. The number one question we get when we interview candidates is this a hybrid work situation? How many days can I work from home? That is the number one question. And that is often a deal breaker for people. So if you had said 5 years ago that you could offer someone the opportunity to work 3 days a week in person and then 2 days a week from home, and they would say that's not enough, you would not believe it. But it's
No, you're right. You're
true.
right. I
It's
mean,
true.
again, going back to my Gen X roots, like if you told me that I didn't have to work 7 days a week,
Right.
I would have been happy.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was coming out of business school, we worked, of course, you're young and you're trying to
Yeah,
find yourself. We worked 7 days and people were pulling
exactly.
all-nighters. They were pulling
Ex
all-nighters in the office, right? It's
yeah,
the badge of honor to
yeah,
do that. But
exactly.
no longer.
Yeah,
So when you're a leader of an organization like that, yeah, a lot of people are just saying, yeah, I'm not going to show up. They want me to be there 3 days a week, but what are they going to do if I don't? The
yeah,
question to me is, when you have a generation of people who have never had to work 5 days a week in the
yeah.
office, what does that look like in 20 years? And how is that going to change the culture of working?
Yeah, no, I think about that a lot, especially with new employees, like new recruits coming into an organization, graduates, really. Like, if they don't learn certain ways to interact in a business setting, I can imagine it really being quite detrimental to them in the longer term. And so, one of the things that I'm thinking a lot about is in a world where you essentially have to maintain hybrid forever, how do you make sure that you have enough in-person interaction moments,
Right.
that essentially you allow junior employees to get training and see how they interact in real terms. I think it's super important, but it's a very, very tricky balance.
And we don't really know
Yeah.
what that's going to look like. So what does that look like when no one in the workplace has ever worked every day in the office? So the culture is going to change a lot.
Good times. Well,
Yeah.
I'll leave that up to you, Tracy, and the Lawrence Advisory to figure that question out for all of us. Tracy, it's been really wonderful talking with you. If someone wanted to learn more about what you and the team are up to, where's the best place to reach you?
It's probably on my website. So it's thelawrenceadvisory.com.
Okay.
And all of our contact information and work history and active projects are on that website.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we've been speaking with Tracy Lawrence. She is the founder and CEO of the Lawrence Advisory, which is a leadership consultancy specializing in delivering dramatic improvements in organizations with strong and distinct cultures. And we've been talking about really I'd say the accelerated changes we're seeing in the leadership space and literally the transformation of work cultures more broadly. Tracy, thank you so much for being on the program, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.